So, as we've talked about before, we're going to be covering a lot of the Tory leadership contest, and I make no apology for this because at the moment we are seeing the candidates take the starting line, and at the moment there are around about 11 so far at the time of me doing this. I don't think there are going to be any more, shall we say, come in at this point. But of course, there is still potential time for some others to get in. But of course, to even get to this point, you have to have at least some sort of backing, some form of backing to sort of get there and to even get on the starting block. You have to have, I think it's 5 MPs support you to be like on the block to begin with. So this could be interesting. And for how many rounds this might go on, well, that could be anyone's guess. I think the Tories are going to try and get this over and done with as quickly as possible. I think this could go to 3 rounds, maybe a 4th one, depending how muddy this contest is indeed, I think, expected to be. And what I've told you in the past couple of months about how dangerous and how interesting this entire conflagration is going to be for these Tory leadership candidates. And not only once they win, but once they're installed as PM, they could find themselves, shall we say, a rump parliament almost already, and a very strong anti-faction forming against them right from the get-go. So, who are these candidates? Who is standing? What are they all about? Well, let's go over this little list that I've got here. Oh, hang on. There we go. So let's go over the potential. Tell you what, we'll do it like this. Let's go over the potential contenders that have so far lining up for this. First of all, as we talked about already, Steve Baker. Now, Baker, I think, is the candidate you pick if you want someone who certainly politics-wise and policy-wise is certainly going to be worse than Johnson. So this is what they've put about him in this comes from London Economic, by the way. I forgot to say that. So first of all, of course, Steve Baker, prominent Brexiteer. And of course, former Minister Steve Baker, a senior Tory backbencher, and he's confirmed on Thursday that he had seriously considered putting himself forward for the job. He told the Times Radio that people are asking him to do it, and that it would be dismissive and disrespectful if he did not heed the expressions of support, though he said he regards the prospect with something akin to dread. Mr. Baker successfully plotted to oust Theresa May as Prime Minister, but despite his credentials as a Brexit diehard, he is not a household name. And that is something probably we are going to, I think, see a lot on this list. The fact that some of these Tories aren't well known, but that could actually work in their favour. The further we go down this list, a lot of you are going to realise that some of these served in Boris Johnson's cabinet. And I think those who served are going to find it very, very hard to, well, get on. And I think because this field at the moment, as we discussed in our last video, is so wide open, you could get someone like Tom Tugner, who is a complete unknown to the vast majority of, like, not only the British public, but even Conservative Party members may not even know who he is, end up, winning this race. So that could be very, very interesting politically if you do get someone like that who wins. But they will find it a lot easier than some of these other people. So Steve Baker certainly will have, at least to begin with, a very easy time in the runoffs. Suella Braverman, someone who is probably going to find it very hard. Suella Braverman, the Attorney General, launched an unlikely leadership bid as support for Mr. Johnson crumbled around him on Wednesday night. Previously loyal to the departing Prime Minister, she told Preston on ITV that he had handled matters appallingly. And in recent days, the balance has now tipped in favour of saying that the Prime Minister, it pains me to say, but it's time to go. Mrs. Braverman, who was first elected as an MP in 2015, is regarded as something as an outsider for the leadership, given the party grandees already tipped to be in the running. Suella Braverman Suella Braverman for PM Twitter account has already sprung up, with Tory MP Sir Desmond Swain becoming the first to tweet his support for her bid. So, yeah, she's going to find it very, very hard to run. Very, very hard to run, I think. Because, as we just said, member of Boris Johnson's cabinet, she's going to have a lot of questions to answer. Like, well, why did the Chris Pincher scandal make you say that that was the point to go when you've had so many other scandals that you could have said, okay, Boris, it's time to go? So next one, Sir Robert Buckland, the new Secretary of State for Wales, has declined to rule out running as Tory leader. Asked on the BBC Radio 4's World Today at one programme on Thursday whether he was considering throwing his hat in the ring, the former Justice Secretary said, "Who knows? It's an unlikely scenario, but I want to see the next Prime Minister as a person who embodies the values that I believe in," he said, emphasising his credentials as a one-nation Conservative. Next up, Jeremy Hunt, the former Foreign Secretary and ex-Health Secretary, has been a persistent backbench critic of Mr. Johnson and has called on the Prime Minister to quit. Mr. Hunt is widely expected to make a fresh bid for the leadership, having been a runner-up to Mr. Johnson in 2019, and is among the early favourites with the bookmakers. As chairman of the Commons and Health Committee, he has used his position to make a number of critical investigations on the government handling of the pandemic, and although his strong support for lockdown measures will have not pleased all Tory MPs. So that is certainly going to obviously hurt his standing with some of the his fellow Tory MPs. But if he does get to a final round, I definitely think he could do it. If he comes up against maybe someone who is sort of a more unknown in the party, that does sort of increases the chances in the final round where you bring the Conservative Party membership into voting for obviously the leader as well at that moment. So next one, Sajid Javid. Like Rishi Sunak, Mr. Javid's resignation on Thursday caused chaos in number 10, as the Health Secretary, from famously humble beginnings, left the government. He further stuck the knife in with an emotional resignation speech in the Commons, with Mr. Johnson sat very stony-faced on the front benches. The state school educator Mr. Javid, known as the Saj in some circles, is the son of a bus driver who arrived in England from Pakistan in the 1960s. He has held ministerial roles in housing, business and culture before becoming the Chancellor, and then the Health Secretary in the middle of the pandemic. Mr. Javid made it to the final four in the contest to replace Theresa May in the Tory leadership contest in 2019, but dropped out and subsequently endorsed Mr. Johnson. He told reporters at his resignation on Thursday evening that he was looking forward to spending time with his family, but for how long? And of course, someone like that, if they did support Johnson, again, they've going to have a very, very hard time trying to win support from those anti-Johnson factions, especially against all the people that turned against Johnson. Why would you want to put someone in who was, again, a big supporter of Johnson and wanted to put him in 2019? So this is where I say that the field could be widely open, and we do not know. This isn't the certain game as it was in 2019, where it was essentially Boris Johnson's to win. There is no clear winner at the moment, and there certainly is no clear candidate set to win. So, as I keep on saying, it's an open field. Anything could happen. Next one, 6. We've talked about this person before, Penny Mordaunt, another frontrunner with the bookies, at 5-1 favourite according to one firm. Mordaunt made waves back in 2019 as the UK's first female defence secretary before being fired by Mr. Johnson shortly after he became Prime Minister. Mrs. Mordaunt has many strings to her bow. She's a Royal Navy reservist, a current trade minister, and a former reality TV contestant, having appeared on the Tom Daley fronted diving show Splash. I've never even heard of that. But, she played a prominent role in the Leave campaign in 2016 at the Brexit referendum, and is previously reported enjoying a backing from Dane Andrea Leibson, among others. She is a big favourite, and there's no denying that. Hence why we've talked about her before. And I think you were going to get a lot of people put forward, well, what are your Brexit credentials? I think if you were originally Leave to begin with, you automatically have quite a big potential pool of support to come from. Because one of the things that has been resounding quite a lot from obviously people on my side is that once Boris goes, Brexit goes. And this has actually caused quite a big existential crisis on the right when that has been said. So they are going to be looking out for, especially those right wingers, to put someone in who is a committed Brexiteer. And Mordaunt fills that box perfectly. So it's possible. So number 7, Rishi Sunak. Perhaps the front runner, with odds at 7-2 in one bookmaker. The former Chancellor's rise from previously obscurity to household name came as he turned on the spending taps to protect jobs throughout the furlough scheme when the coronavirus pandemic struck. But he's lost probably a lot of popularity since that. And of course, that wasn't really popular with a lot of Tory MPs. His calm and measured delivery during the televised corona briefings, his viral declaration of love for a popular soft drink, have earned him those perhaps not always plugged into the political ongoings, but his resignation on matters of principle on Thursday. But his stock took a tumble more recently following the disclosure, of course, it was his wife's non-dom status for tax purposes, and criticism that he was too slow to respond to the cost of living crisis. And those are certainly two things that are going to hurt him a lot for this. And if you may remember, when his wife's non-dom status came out, a lot of people were saying that potentially could put him out of the running. But given how wide open this field is, that may not matter. So on to number 8, Liz Truss. The Foreign Secretary has made little secret of her leadership ambitions, with a series of high-profile interventions and photo opportunities in which she appeared to be channeling the late PM Margaret Thatcher. Despite her fervent Johnson loyalism, she is nowhere to be seen as the government crumbled around her. Her hard line on Ukraine in insisting that Russian forces must be driven from the country and threats to tear up the Northern Ireland Protocol, while the EU play well with certain sections of the party. Away from politics, Truss has a flair for social media that has her an offer into an insight into a life outside Westminster by updating her Instagram account with pictures of her relaxing at the beach or behind the scenes with official events, though her passions combined into a bizarre effect in 2014 when her improbably enthusiastic speech about opening of pork markets in Beijing went viral. And that, of course, is certainly what a lot of people talk about. Can we really trust? Can we really trust Liz Truss? There's a lot of talk about her being the female Boris Johnson, and that could certainly be a possibility. But as it talks about there, her social media presence is what has given her a lot of popularity. And if she gets to the final 2, I think it's hers to win. She is very, very popular amongst the non-parliamentary party. She has that support there. If she gets to the final 2, bar any embarrassing interviews or maybe something comes up, the potential, if she gets to the final 2, it could be hers very much to win. So number 9, Tom Tugendhat. Again, this is probably a name you're going to be starting hearing a lot of, certainly very recently. So the polyglot chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee became the first to announce his intention to stand for leader should Mr. Johnson be turfed out. And that was made back in January. He repeated this position in Friday's Daily Telegraph, saying that he was putting together a broad coalition offering a clean start. And I think that puts him in a very, very good position. Not only has he been a constant critic of Mr. Johnson since day one, but he is been known to do very, very well on these foreign affairs select committees. He's got a good track record. He's got a good background. He's got the potential to go all the way. And because, again, we keep on saying it, but because this is such an open field, that there was no clear successor to Johnson, this could be anyone's for the taking. And because it could be anyone's for the taking, it is going to get very, very brutal very, very quickly. But anyway, we'll go on. The former soldier wrote in the paper, I have served before in the military and now in Parliament, and now I hope to answer the call again as Prime Minister. Tory MP Damien Green had previously said that he would back Mr. Tugnan in any leadership contest, telling Sky News, you can take it that Tom is going to run. A Remainer back in 2016, that will possibly play very bad against him. The former soldier has been a very much a critic of Mr. Johnson, and a stance that would have appeared to have cost him a chance of the ministerial preferment under the current leadership. He recently sought to distance himself from a call by his fellow Remainer and Defence Committee Chairman Tobias Ellwood for the UK to rejoin the EU single market. So that could be very interesting. Certainly, obviously, he was a Remainer back in 2016, and I've said there's going to be lots on the far right who certainly want to choose someone who was a committed Brexiteer. Like I say, I think there's going to be a lot of hesitation to choose someone who was a Remainer, like Theresa May. So that could definitely work against him. But like I say, we'll have to see. Number 10, Ben Wallace. The Defence Secretary has won admirers in Westminster for his straight-talking, straightforward approach, particularly amongst Tory MPs who are pressed for the UK to increase its defence spending. And although cuts to the size of the army do remain a cause for concern, Mr. Wallace, who served in the Scots Guards, remains a key voice in the UK's response to the Russian invasion in Ukraine, as increased exposure could assist in any leadership bid. He has constantly supported Mr. Johnson, but has passed the case for increased defence spending. Again, current member of Johnson's government, going to find it very, very hard. Now, obviously, what we know in the background is that it was a combination of Ben Wallace, Tobias Ellwood, and Tom Tugnan pushing Johnson to support Ukraine. So there could be a large contingent of Tories that do support him. Again, it's very possible. Like I say, this field is so open. It could be any one of these people at this moment in time. And of course, Nadhim Zahawi. The former Education Secretary is regarded as a safe pair of hands if other candidates prove too divisive. Indeed, this was the man trusted to take on the broadcast round in interviews on Wednesday morning on his first full day as his new job as the Chancellor, before later urging the PM to resign. The Iraqi-born Mr. Zahawi has a successful businessman and came to wider prominence as a vaccine minister during the pandemic, where he was credited with playing a key role in the successful rollout of the jab. So ultimately, these are your 11 so far, at least. And to be honest, there's no clear winner. There is absolutely no clear winner. You can't go, yeah, they're going to get it. Now, certainly in situations, as I've said, if Liz Truss can somehow get to the final two and she doesn't have like a bad interview, or there's no scandals, or someone doesn't manage to like pull her down or anything like that, it is entirely possible that she gets there and she wins. But it's also entirely possible that you get people like Tom Tugnan or Penny Mordaunt who have not been, shall we say, tarred, or even Jeremy Hunt, tarred with like the Johnson government, but have managed to sort of keep themselves separate from it, but want to continue going on forward and try and get this top job. it is very, very possible that they could win. I mean, Jeremy Hunt obviously is a big Tory grandee, and obviously he came second to Johnson. So sort of, I'm quite surprised that he's not the favourite. If you looked at the bookies sort of odds on him, I wouldn't be surprised if he is the favourite, to be honest. But that's I think that's how you go it. And I think this is going to be the interesting point because it is so open. You do not know who could win. There is no clear winner. There is no clear successor. I've said before how many times this is going to be brutal. The fact that you have all these people from key different factions going up against each other, and especially, interesting enough, where some of these people could be very, very easily keen to cut a deal with other people. So, for example, let's say Tom Tugner is finding a problem against Zawawi, but Zawawi doesn't want the top job. He could go, well, tell you what, Zawawi, why don't you continue on as Chancellor of the Exchequer? Because everyone knows whoever comes in, the cabinet is going to be completely swept clean. Completely. They are known, everyone in sort of Johnson's cabinet is known to be a complete useless waste of space. So the fact that the big jobs like Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, Treasurer, these could be used to as like little pieces of dangling meat. Say, vote for me and you'll get this job. It is entirely possible that we could see that on play and on display. So certainly it is shaping up already to be a very, very interesting contest. Like I say, these are your sort of 11 so far potential candidates. I fully suspect that will be the candidate list. Maybe you might see Michael Gove squeak in there, but it's possible. But I very much doubt no one else is going to sort of squeak in on that list. They may do, but again, we'll have to wait and see. Like I say, this could be such an open field that people just put their hat in the ring just to get a name in there, just to get attention, and maybe sort of build their profile, not for, shall we say, this run at Prime Minister, but maybe a potential future run at being Prime Minister. So it's all to play for. And there are some really bad options like Steve Baker. If you want to go, if you want to go with a worse option than Boris Johnson, then Steve Baker's your man. But this list of candidates could prove very, very interesting, and it could prove even more interesting, certainly when they're going against someone like Keir Starmer. None of these people, shall we say, are known to have big personalities, at least not as big as Johnson. And I think that will be one key difference a lot of people do notice, that their leaders, shall we say, are a lot more subdued than Boris Johnson certainly was. And maybe we go back to sort of the Theresa May, David Cameron style of leadership that we saw during those exchanges back then. So, as always, we will remain watching on this and just wait to see what happens here. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit the old like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.